Hello, theme park enthusiasts, and welcome back to Planet Coaster and to Appleford Amusement Park. In this episode, I'm going to work on the train stations around the park. So we've got 4 different stations to work on, and what I wanted to do was I wanted them all to fit the color scheme of the park with the whites and purples and golds, but I wanted each one to be unique and a bit different. So for most of this video, I'm not going to say too much because there's not a lot to say. It's pretty self-explanatory here. It's just doing some different materials and different style for each of the different buildings that go on here. So we're starting at the back of the park with the building there because I wanted to do sort of a brick look, and I figured that toward the back, near where I was planning on putting the garden in, would be the best place for this particular building, as it's a bit more of a modern style, and this is a more modern area of the park with the sort of garden theme going on. You will notice with each of the buildings as I do them, there is going to be the fairy lighting going on with it. As I said, I really want to pay attention to having theming that's consistent throughout the park, and really do care about having that visual going on of the different lighting. So I really cared about that, wanted it to look as good as I possibly could. Here I'm just putting in some post in order to fill in this gap that goes on here. I possibly will get some more beams off the workshop. I know there's a couple creators out there that have made some really good beams, but personally I sort of like the ones that are in the game. I don't see them as problematic, so I'm not sure. I'm going to go back and forth on that a little bit and decide in the end what I want. You will notice on this one it's sort of a raised area, so the track is up a bit, but on some of the other ones I'm down near the ground, so I go ahead and do some gravel underneath that I also got off the workshop. Really, as I said, it's a matter of just fleshing out these buildings so that they look complete and they fit the overall style of the park. So with that, I'm going to let you enjoy some Planet Coaster music and watch as I build out these 4 different buildings. Alright, and having done the other 3 buildings for the train stations, I realized this is just not going to work as it is. It doesn't really say what I wanted about the park. As I sort of said in last week's episode, this isn't a park built around a castle theme. It's not themed at all, so I really didn't like the idea of having this castle. I looked at some other possible circle shapes for the side, and then at the end I just decided, you know what, they don't work at all. So I end up getting rid of those. What I'm looking at here actually as far as the circles is going to be for a different reason that you'll see here in a little while, but I needed to know which shape I liked best so I could know which walls I was going to use on this area. So I went with the brick. I thought that it fit well. It sort of fits the overall theme of the ride, and at the same time it doesn't really take away from the park overall. As I said, I did not like this whole castle that I felt like would leave too much of a lasting impression for the guests the way it was. So the brick works a lot better here, and you'll see what my overall idea is with it here as we go along. Basically, for one, removing all of the castle stuff, getting rid of all that junk, putting in this brick. I do leave it just sort of as a basic white brick with a sort of normal mortar joint color here. I do another building in this brick later. You'll see that probably in a couple weeks, and that one I do change the mortar color as well. But for this one, just the standard tan mortar worked, I thought, fine for it. As I said, we're getting rid of all that castle stuff, just getting the overall layout with the brick going on. So it's sort of repeating what we had done the last time, but we're definitely not going to have the turrets that we had the last time going on here, because those just didn't work for what this ride is, or for the park in general. Instead, we're just going to have this sort of bridgeway here that goes across. A little bit of a wall, because I did want a little bit of a raised wall there, but not too much. Then again, a bridge on this side. And then we're going to work on making this fit much more the theme of the park overall by having a raised area in purple beams that's going to fit more with the sort of wood and brick architecture of the place. First thing we need to do is put in a little bit of a ceiling to the people that are walking underneath, or in the case of the train itself, a little bit of a floor for this area. So having to deal with it glitching through the wall slightly, it's a little bit annoying, but I'm able to get it to work for the most part, and I'm able to use some beams later on that are able to hide it where I couldn't get it to go away. And then put the flooring all the way under, so that way the track is entirely up on that floor all the way across. Just makes it seem to fit better, I felt. So even as it stands now, I feel like this building is better looking than the castle was. It fits more with what I wanted in the park. These need to change now, but it also gives me the opportunity to put in the brick there where I needed it. So now we're going to go ahead and put in the entrance paths with the intention of wrapping them. And that's why I needed to see that brick look earlier, because I want to use the brick to sort of wrap around it at a point in time. So the paths needed to look and feel a certain way. Looking at different column possibilities here, because I knew I wanted to use some columns of some kind to support a roof structure over this area. And in the end, I end up going with sort of just the old reliable ones. They seem to work in almost every case. And I like the fact that I can put them in all different directions here, so I can sort of form a little bit of an extra lip to this area with them. Add some of that purple color in. they just fit well. It's odd to say, but in a game like this, these beams, these basic beams sometimes, are the most useful tool in the game, it seems. They allow you to do so many things with them, and really important to what I'm trying to achieve. Now looking back on it, I realize I probably could have just actually duplicated this entire section here and put it in as a roof area. And again, that's one of those things I'm now thinking about and more aware of as I continue playing the game more, and I'm getting used to using the copy tool more and everything of that nature. But at this point, still wasn't that aware of it, so hadn't thought about using it in those styles yet. So instead here, I just create the roof as I want it, just putting these beams in that way. Just sort of randomly spacing them along. Trying to divide this section up here fairly evenly. And I think about it for a second, I believe, and I say, you know, I could just go ahead and put it evenly spaced using one of those beams. So I go ahead and start copying it that way, making my life so much easier. Slight adjustment there for the entrance area. Same here for the exit, but not enormous amounts, so it's not even really noticeable. So that'll work out perfectly fine. Here I know I need to have this span crossed, and then I just sort of want to divide it down the middle with the beam right there. Then I take the entire thing, copy it over to the other side so it's completely uniform for both sides. And then this is going to get moved and raised up. I like the flags, but I want them a bit higher. On top of that, my fiance had suggested that they should form almost like a symbol for the park. So you will see here in a little bit as I sort of put a back into those flags, just to make them stand out a little bit in the way that they look. So here I'm just looking to see which roof will work with what I'm doing. This one fits, so it's the winner. Just wanting a little something there to fill in this gap. And the brick that I'm using on the lower area seems to be the perfect thing for it. So I just go ahead and put it in. Again, having it be white, just to sort of carry that theme all the way through. Then we'll put a nice little ridge to the roof here, just to add a little detail to it. We'll go ahead and cover what was just sort of the standard wood beam there with our purple wood beams to make it more consistent throughout the area. Just blend that in a bit. As I said, here I wanted to go ahead and wrap the staircases with the stone. This first one I was able to do so fairly easily, I felt. So I start work on this one, and I really like how it comes out. The circle is almost perfect for the way it is. Just really sort of covers that area. Now, to get the other side is not as easy, and what I end up doing is having to create a separate building from the first one in order to get it to fit properly. But that works out okay as far as I'm concerned. So, make it into a separate building. Then I make this into a third building to get that curve there covered. Is it perfect? No, but it's close. It looks good as far as I'm concerned. It does cover most of what I wanted there, so I'm happy with the way it ends up looking. Unfortunately, I can't use beams to cover that area, and trying to do so otherwise would make it very challenging. Wish I could change the wood color to fit with the rest of the stuff and have the stairs be the same color, or the ramps be the same color as the building here, but it's just not a possibility, so I have to leave it alone. Here I go ahead and put some beams down in this section to go ahead and create a design here as well. And to sort of break up that large expanse of white with a little bit of color. I have to say, I am liking the purple more than I am the yellow overall that I'm using for this park. Neither one's truly a color that I prefer, but for some reason in my mind, Appleford Amusement Park always has been a purple and gold color scheme. I think it has to do with Joseph Appleford, the owner of the park, and sort of his life experience and motivation. They're sort of royal and very traditional colors. And I think as you hear his story more in the upcoming episodes, you'll find that he's sort of got a royal type of identity to him, and definitely an old-fashioned identity to him. So I think it fits well in that aspect. This one, as I said, the circles don't wrap around nearly as well, so I do really struggle to make it work, but it's close as far as the wrapping of this stairway. And I felt that it blends in nicely in the end, which was the whole point of doing this. Again, I'm using this as multiple different buildings because trying to do it as one building just isn't going to work. Trying to figure out here how I can make it work, and I do struggle and fail quite a few times. By adjusting it a little bit, I was able to get the curve to be a bit more profound to sort of fit with the brick curve a bit more. And as I said, it's just a bit of trial and error to play with it, get it as close as I possibly can. It'll never be exact. Problem with the building stuff is, like this curve that we have going upwards here, the building supplies aren't able to be put at an angle. They have to be sort of flat to the ground. And with that in mind, yeah, I'm never going to be able to get that curve upwards to look exactly perfect. Excuse me. But I try to fill it in the best I can here. As I said, I think I get it fairly close to where it's not that noticeable of an issue. Does take a lot more wall pieces than I would have liked it to, but I didn't have a lot of choice in order to try to make it work, just because of the way that the pathing and wall structure systems are in the game. In the end, my best attempt just really doesn't work the way I wanted to, so I end up having to scrap this idea. You'll see here in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and delete all of the stuff that I just put in, and I'm also going to delete the actual path. And instead, I'm going to go with a sort of straightforward angled downward approach. And I hoped with this, then I could build a very simple brick wall around it, make it work a lot easier. Originally, you're going to see here it doesn't work with the angle, but when I put it into a staircase, it does. This does mean that I have a shorter entrance for this one than I might have liked to have had. And the bigger thing it does mean is this is the one entrance in the park where I do not have a fast pass location for it. It's just one of those that with the staircases and stuff, you really can't have a fast pass on the staircases. That doesn't work. And I don't want this to be an extraordinarily long queue going straight outwards. So with that in mind, it had to be a shorter queue, and it also just wasn't going to work as far as putting in the fast pass. So a concession had to be made there. It's not the end of the world as far as I'm concerned. Overall, it still looks pretty good, I think. So I'm accepting of the way that it ends up. I think at this point I had stepped away for a moment. My fiance is also playing Planet Coaster, and she had a question on her game that she wanted me to try to answer for her, so I had to step away and go help her for a moment with that. But now we're back, trying to get these pieces to fit in here, and the biggest thing for me here is trying to match up the bricks so it looks like it's one continuous wall instead of different pieces being put in. So the one issue I find with the brick overall is you do have to be somewhat cautious about the way you place it, as otherwise it just doesn't come out looking right, and that's something that matters to me. I do want it to look very solid and structural. Here I'm just making sure every little bit underground there is covered up. As I said, I probably will put some plants or something like this in the future, but I do care about everything looking proper as it goes along as well. So just wanting to make sure that I'm making all those lines as close as I possibly can so that they're nice and straight and uniform looking. Alright, so we've got that, which works a lot better than it had with the curved path. Then I put this little piece at the end here because I knew I could always put a curved path around that. Didn't need to in the end because of the ground, so I was able to leave it as it was. As I'd said, my fiance here with the flags had said maybe make it more of a sign-like structure. And so I decided that possibly some of the shapes within the game could work really well for that. And here was an opportunity to add in some of that gold that I hadn't felt like I was using enough in the game at the time. So I go ahead and put that into place. As I've said a couple times, the purple is going to change to be more of a royal purple in the end. Right now it's still that sort of pinkish purple. So you will see in time that that will change on the signs and on the flags here. So it'll make it a more impactful look to it. Right now I'm just sort of trying to figure out which particular shape I feel like works best for this. And I end up going with this one because there's something about it that works for me. It sort of gives the same appearance as the flags in a unique way. So I liked it. Then I just needed to fill in the space that was left blank there. So that worked out right as far as I was concerned. Originally I thought about putting an air piece up there. Didn't like how that was going to look, and instead I just sort of square it off at the top. I feel like that worked out pretty well. Then I realized at nighttime it doesn't show up enough. So I do go ahead and put some lighting in here take care of that. Want to make sure it's not sticking through too badly or anything like that from the inside of the building, as this is an open building where you could see it there. I always try to make sure that anything I'm putting in that kind of a situation is somewhat hidden. These, as I said, they'll be sticking through slightly, but sort of hidden still at the same time. So we get some lighting there. I look at putting a railing on top of this building. I feel like it works to a point here, but it's not needed really. And instead, I go with my Old Faithful, the fairy lights here. Put those at a little bit of an angle and just put them across the roof here. As this building, like any other building in the park, needs to be well lit, so that way it stands out for the guests in the dark and really shows up nicely. This one though, I was aware of the fact that I wanted the lighting to not have a negative impact on the look of, say, the sign and the flags and such. So lighting on it was a bit different than a lot of lighting I've done, in the fact that I did want to make sure that the lighting didn't take away from what I was doing. So same sort of idea here. I needed some lighting in the station, but I wanted it to be very simple, and so I go with these overhead lights hanging from beams. They work out well, and at the same time they don't really take away from what's going on. I think I had realized that the light wasn't exactly centered the way I wanted it to be, so I go ahead and put them back into place here, using that and making sure that I'm sort of doing every other beam in the place just to make it have a nice uniform nature to it. Here, since this is sort of our sign now for the location, I did want to put some lighting on it as well. So again, same as I had the struggles with the coaster, doing the lights and trying to get the angles here on the sign is a challenge. This gives you a little sneak peek into the struggle that I had following the coaster lines all the way around on the monster. It's not nearly as dramatic, it's not nearly as challenging, but it's still not really a fun thing overall. Because you think you have it set up in one direction, and then you realize that actually the lights are coming outwards from the sign, and so you have to go back and start all over again. Something I did on the monster, and I also do here, I go to some of the areas where it's more of a straight line, and I put those lights in, because then, I feel like I'm seeing progress as I'm going along. There's a light at the end of the tunnel in a way. I'm hopeful that it's not a train coming at me, but you never know. So I was able to get these lights in place, and having seen the progress with them, I'm then able to go ahead and deal with the bottom here, and then I can say, okay, now I'll tackle those angles. With lighting it like this, as I said, I love the look that it has in the end. I feel it's perfect for this particular park, but it is somewhat the bane of my existence at the same time. I will be happy when this park is done, and I will never do lighting like this again, probably. That's probably not true, as I just like the way it looks, and even if I'm doing sort of a Disney-esque entranceway with buildings and such, I probably will end up doing lighting like this on them as well, but I will probably do it on areas of the buildings like I did with the other train stations in this episode, where it's not the challenge or the burden that it is in areas like this. I'll try to keep it to places where it's not on extreme angles and such, so it's not that hard of a thing to do. For some reason, this piece went really smoothly on. Was almost nervous about it because of the fact that it went on so smoothly, but it did. It looked good. I was happy with the sort of exterior lighting to it there. And then I just wanted to add a little bit of lighting toward the top here. But as I said, I wanted to be very aware of the fact I did not want the lighting to take away from the Appleford Amusement sign that's down below, and I didn't want it distracting from the sign above either. So it was sort of that delicate balance of making sure that there was enough lighting so that it stayed consistent with the rest of the park, while at the same time ensuring that it didn't distract from what the rest of the sign and such had. Now again, I see this and I realize, wow, I should have just copied over all those lights from the other side. Would have made my life so much simpler, but I hadn't learned. I still was a glutton for punishment, and so I redid all the lighting one piece at a time here, going across, and struggled with it because of it. If this had been a building in a different area of the park, I probably would have done lighting along the beams and everything as well that go downwards. But as I said, because of where it is, I felt like that was going to take away from the other pieces of the building, and I really didn't want to do that. So it's minimally lit in comparison to a lot of the things, but I do like how it is overall. Then as a final touch in this area, I'm going to go ahead and put the little bit of theming that we're going to have here, which is going to be some train tracks and the train that's in the game. Now most everyone uses this particular train to be crashing and stuff like that, and I believe there's actually an animatronic one that does crash if you wanted to, kind of thing. I didn't want that here. I just wanted a train on the tracks that was going to go ahead and sit here and look pretty and sort of be its own sign for this area. This is one of the few rides that doesn't have a major sign to it. Even the gondolas and stuff do have a little bit of a brighter sign than this does. So I felt like at least at one of the stations, this one being the front station of the entire park, it needed a little something here. So I go ahead, put some steam in coming out of the smokestack here. That's fairly traditional, I know. Get the colors to sort of fit with what I was wanting. Later on, when I'm working on something else, it strikes me that there's no, for some reason it comes to my mind, that there's no windows on the one rail car that's here. So I do go back and fix that in an episode. Probably won't even leave that video in for that particular video, but who knows, I might. But overall, as I said, it's just sort of, this finishes off this area of the park, I think. With or without windows, it's a little train. It works fine. I wanted to be a little bit more creative than a lot of people are, I feel, with the train. I wanted some extra steam coming out just here from the front, just to show that these things are actually working, like it is moving and such. Just a little touch, but I felt like it worked out nicely. And then I also wanted to put in some uplighting, so that way it had some color at night and really stood out a little bit. So I went with some purple lights to it, just to deck it out. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and click the like button. And if you've not already, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, so you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. Thank you, and I hope to see you all again for the next episode of Planet Coaster, and for more Appleford Amusement Park.